Good evening and welcome to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen Workshop. It is October 1st, 2020 at 6:30. Call this meeting to order. We do have a quorum. The prayer on Tuesday night will be by myself. The Pledge of Allegiance will be by Vice Mayor Brown. You should all have a copy of the minutes from the September 1st, 2020 regular meeting in your packet. We will have a couple presentations Tuesday night, certificate of recognition and a proclamation for the freest city in Tennessee from Representative Mike Sparks. We do have one tonight with the proclamation for the Fire Prevention Week. Chief, if you could come up, board, y'all come on down. Chief, come on up here. First, can you kind of speak to what Fire Prevention Week is? This way our residents who may not be as well informed will know about it.
Fire Prevention Week is basically an opportunity that fire departments across the nation take the time to invest just a little bit more to bring to the light of public education for the people that typically they're most at risk in fire fatalities and injuries, the young and the seniors. So it's a great opportunity for us to reach out into the public. This weekend or on the 10th, we'll be reading to the school kids at the library. Just a good example of what we're going to be doing.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, we want to proclaim that here for the city of Laverne, so let's go ahead and officially sign this. And I will present you this.
Right. Thank you, sir.
So, thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, yes, ma'am.
We have departmental reports, and then moving on to old business, second reading, Ordinance 2020-14, an ordinance to amend the fiscal year 2019-2020 Parks Capital Fund budget. And you will find something a little bit new with this in your packet. This is something Bruce has been working on, where we have both the ordinance as well as a agenda item summary sheet that helps to just put it in normal, common language for everyone. And so this is essentially an $8,543 budget amendment, and it's for the park. Any questions? Moving on to the consent agenda. Approve city bids and purchases as recommended. First up, fireworks.
Sure, we're going to have fireworks. We had a fireworks bid opening and we only had one response. Pyro Shows has always done a great show before, so we encourage, sorry, I can't breathe. We would encourage you to approve that because this was the second time we bid this.
That is a 3-year package, is that right?
Yes, it's a 3-year.
Any questions? Next, we have the bid for the
Library
library
roof.
roof.
Well, we had several bids on this, so instead of, you can't go with the lowest with everything. And so David and Randy and myself, they reviewed bids, we spoke, we discussed this, and we all agreed to recommend Millennium because they were in the middle. Now, we may have to add to that due to if there's some rotted wood or anything, but there's always a chance there's not, so that we would save money and maybe not come back for a change order. We're hoping not to have to come back for any kind of change order. $150,000 of this is from a grant. The other will have to come out of fund balance because it is $200,000. $200,000, $600. $660.
Okay. And 140 of that was the grant from the
Okay.
governor. Any questions? Have we worked with Millennium Roofing before?
No, but we know some people that know them, and we have, the references were really good. They've done some big projects.
Okay.
They've done mostly commercial. They do residential, but a lot of commercial.
Okay.
Do we get any warranty with that?
Felicia, is there any warranty
Warranty
with that, with the roofing?
I believe there was, I sent all the,
Page
I want to say a
11,
20-year.
page 11, home number 9 has a 10-year warranty on the workmanship for the
Right.
shingle roof area and a 2-year on the,
Yeah, 10-year, and 2-year on the contractor's workmanship. But that's two different sections. You have two different types of roof. You have regular shingle roof over there, and then you have flat roof over there. That's a big project.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Okay, I made the phone calls to each one of you and asked that we be able to bring this back. We saved about $7,000 by buying a Chevy versus the Ford, but the Chevy had everything, a lot of the lights and things that we needed already on it. So we just are asking for permission to,
This is just ratifying a state contract purchase
Basically.
we've already made, and,
don't slap our hand again. We did doing the right thing by
Well-
cleanup.
well, with these, where we're saving $7,000, they're a little bit easier to swallow.
Yeah, well, that was my thought.
That's
When
a
they
Chevy.
came to me, my thought was, okay, I think I can do that if we can save some money. And then we have the sole source, for the laser scanner for the police department, which is a grant purchase. Sole source purchase, and it will help them a lot, tremendously.
This is a pretty cool piece of technology because they can
Yeah.
scan a whole scene and then later on go back to it. So that's amazing that we can get that
It'll be really
equipment.
good, so.
Any questions on that?
any- Okay.
Okay, let's move on to accept and approve the 2021 Tennessee Highway Safety Office Grant. This is the grant that we do each year that helps to pay for overtime with some of our seatbelt checks, DUI checkpoints, that sort of thing. The grant total is just under $50,000. Any questions? Then we have C, approve support agreement with Tyler Technologies for the Police Department CAD system. This is a $161,000 contract, and this is a one-year renewal. So this is slightly up from last year's $159,000.
Mayor,
Yes.
if I may, we were made aware just late this afternoon that there may be some line items in this renewal that we can remove because they are fire department related, and the fire department is not using this specific software. So I have inquired with Tyler Technologies to see if that can be removed. Hopefully, we can get that done before Tuesday night, but more than likely, we're going to have to move this down under new business.
Okay.
And then if we can get it removed by Tuesday night, great, we can move forward. If not, I'll probably recommend that we defer it until we can get that straightened out.
Okay.
It's $27,000 worth, so
I was gonna
That's a good
say,
chunk.
so it's $27,000 cheaper.
it should be, yes.
Okay, thank you, Bruce. Moving on to D, ratify approval of contract with Resurrection for Old Timers Day Festival Entertainment. This is just entertainment contract. It's $7,000 out of the budget for Old Timers Festival. Any questions? We're going on to E, ratify approval of contract with GNRC for CARES Act funding at the Senior Center. This is just ratifying a grant that the deadline they gave us was well before this meeting, so we're bringing it before the board to ratify. It's a $5,000 grant for the Senior Center for various items associated with the CARES Act. Any questions? Moving on to F, approve amendment number 1, agreement for engineering services with CTI Engineers Incorporated for the Interceptor sewer line improvements. Mr. Neal.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Alderman. I come to you again today asking for money. When we begin these jobs, our basic services are a lump sum, and then things like surveys, permits, and easements are a cost plus. And we've used up our cost plus budget on the current Interceptor sewer project. And I am asking you to amend our contract by $5,000, which will allow budget for services that we might be asked to provide during the easement acquisition process. All the permits are obtained, all the surveys are done, but I think the easements still have to be obtained. And typically, the folks getting the easements have revisions and work that we need to do to assist them. So this would increase the budget so we would be able to supply those services.
Okay, any questions?
Does somebody from the city go out and verify what he needs, or do we just take his word for it?
Well, Neil works with Adam and Kyle in engineering and to make sure that everything stays on course.
Okay.
And of course, the mayor has to sign all the permits.
Which is
Thank
fun.
you.
Thank you. Moving on to G, approve master dark fiber IRU agreement with United Communications. If you remember, last month we had the agreement with United come up. This is just for the dark fiber line portion we've been talking about. That can help underscore as far as like some of our 911 technology and help improve what's going on in internet connectivity here in all of our city buildings. Any questions?
I do have a question on this one. Is this already a part of the budget, the existing budget, or would this be an amendment?
Well, this is just an agreement. We've already done, as far as we've already passed most of it for the budget portion. This is, if I'm remembering correctly, this is where they're going to splice the lines for 911. So we have a dedicated backup.
No,
Nope, it's not that one. That's the other one.
that's a different one. This is the interconnectivity of our buildings for our network purposes and internet purposes. The bid was approved last month by this board. The money is coming from grant funding from the state.
Okay.
And we had allocated, right at $550,000 for this. And then the monthly fee is just something we'll pay out of operating. But this is just the agreement for that bid that was approved last month.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the budget portion's already done. This is just the actual paperwork for the agreement.
Okay.
Correct.
Any other questions? Moving on over to new business, first reading ordinance 2020-15. An ordinance to amend the City of Laverne zoning ordinance by changing the official zoning map for tax map 14, parcel 50, consisting of approximately 15.4 acres located at 470 Dick Buchanan Street, from an I-3 special use industrial zoning to an I-2 heavy industrial zoning district. This received a favorable recommendation from the Planning Commission on August 25th of 2020. Any questions about this?
Do we have the map, is there a map of that property here in the,
Yes. Should be on page, well, it should be just, if you go to 6.
oh, I got it. Okay. Got it. Okay.
It should be right there, and then everything surrounding it is I-1, with the exception of some agricultural to the south.
Okay.
And it is the only piece that is I-3 right there. Any other questions? Okay. First reading ordinance 2020-16, an ordinance to amend the fiscal year 2020-2021 general fund budget. This is the library roof. This is adding additional money for that. There's also in here for a new sidearm tractor for the streets department. Garland and I have been talking, and just the belief is that the current tractors we have aren't going to make it through. So That is in here as well. That tractor will be, will cost $129,000, so the total is $180,000 that will need to come from fund balance. Any questions?
So, sorry, how much of it is coming from the grant?
So as far as for the tractor, none of it's coming from the grant
Okay,
for the tractor. For the roof, for the library, well, on our other, for the consent agenda, Bruce, it says 140, and that's what I thought it was. This says 150 here.
Correct. The budget for the library was at $150, but we didn't have enough grant funding to fully pay for that $150. But what was put in the budget was $150. So the remaining $50,000 roughly is what is in this budget amendment for the library roof. And then the remainder of that is the amount for the tractor.
Okay, so 50,000 of it from the budget will come, from fund budget will go to the library for the roof to combine with that other 150 from the grant, and then 129 of this will be for the tractor.
okay, so the total was just throwing me off, so the total is actually 179,000?
Well, it's, the tractor is just under 129, and then we budget for the library roof, it's actually just over $200,000. So we did
Okay.
201 and
Okay, so we're just rounding.
129, so, 31 and 129 is, I'm getting confused, right? $180,000 total.
Okay, thank you, I got it.
51 and
I
120.
was just trying to make the math work, and I was like, this
Right.
math isn't working in my head here.
All right, 51 and 129.
Okay.
Any other questions? Moving on to Resolution 2020-13, a resolution of the City of Laverne Board of Mayor and Aldermen to declare property owned by the city to be surplus to the city needs and directing disposal of the same. This is one drug seizure vehicle that the city has been awarded. It would be placed on Gov Deals. And then we also have about 80 weapons that have been awarded. Usually the city will trade in weapons for new ammunition and accessories, but there are 2 weapons that will be destroyed on this list. And so by doing that trade with ammunition, we're saving just over $5,400 that would have been spent on ammunition. Any questions? Moving on to number 9, Resolution 2020-14. A resolution to authorize special military leave as provided in the City of Laverne Personnel Policy and Procedures Manual. This is, just for background information, it's the part of the personnel policy that allows employees that are called for active duty an additional 22 days of special military leave. They continue with their health, their life insurance while they're deployed, and they receive a partial pay up to $750 a month for any difference in the employee's regular salary and the employee's full-time military salary. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. Next, motion to approve Parks and Recreation Master Plan. David, do you want to come up here and talk about that?
Thank you, Mayor Board. Yes, this is just the approval of the final draft of the master plan. They did take and incorporate the majority of the results we've got from the surveys. So that's probably the only thing that's been added in here since you guys saw it last.
And were there big changes on that?
I think we totally had 500 and some odd respondents. So probably over the course of a couple of weeks, we probably got 100, 150, 200 more.
Okay.
I know you've been advertising it hard.
Well, it was pushed out quite a bit, thanks to the mayor, so that kind of got the ball rolling a little bit more there. So we did want to wait till that final push came through so we could get most of the responses in.
Changes with the demands and needs assessment portion, those bars have shifted.
Yes, sir. Yeah, and that'll help us move forward with the final draft as far as applying for grants.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, David. And moving on to number 11, we have appoint and/or remove board and committee members. We have the Laverne Industrial Development Board. We have one term vacant. That's where Alderman Coates has come off that board. We have one applicant, Daniel Pazich. I think that's how you pronounce his last name.
Yeah.
Has applied. We will still be taking applications up through Monday, and if anyone would like to apply, we will go from there. Moving on to number 12, which is impact fee study. We've got some information here on that. Bruce, do you or Kyle, because I know y'all were both working on this in tandem, kind of walk us through this?
He's letting me do it. Yes, in the packets, there is a spreadsheet that Kyle came up with. On page 1 here, it shows what the updated impact fees are for police and fire. On the screen there is the police. If you look at single-family detached, it's $548 per unit, which in that case is a dwelling. If you go down to fire, and this is at 100%, mind you, of the recommended fee. If you go down to fire, the recommended maximum is $208 per house. And so we felt pretty confident that the board would probably want to approve those two fees at 100% because of what the dollar amount is and because of the big needs that we have in those two areas. So but those are what has been recommended. If you go to the next page, there's the updated Parks and Recreation impact fees. And don't forget that the Parks impact fees are only for residential. We don't charge impact fees, Parks impact fees for industrial, commercial, et cetera. You can see there that there are different columns ranging from 20% to 90% of what that total cost would be if you only decide to use one of those percentages. For instance, if you wanted to charge 50% for the parks fees, you would only collect $639 per house for the single family. Likewise, if you go down to the road impact fees, you also see columns there ranging from 20% to 90%. The maximum cost per unit is $4,646. But if you look at the percentages across the table there, you'll see what the different cost would be for the different percentages. There again, if you chose 50%, it'd be $2,323. If you go down to the following page, it's kind of a summary of the first two pages. For single-family detached, if you were to go with 100% for parks and 100% for police and 100% for fire, and then you chose, 20, 30, 40, up to 90% on both roads and parks, you'll see what the total amount is there, what it would cost for a single-family home. So, for instance, if you were to decide to do for roads and parks at 50%, by the time you add those two together and then add the 100% amounts for police and fire, the total impact fee per house would be $3,718. Now, I'm not suggesting any certain numbers, but this is where we need input from you as the board to know where you want those impact fees to be. If you go down to the next page, it kind of shows what the impact fees are for Smyrna. There's some comparisons there. Smyrna, they have parks, public safety, and roads. Their total for a single family is $2,708, where ours currently is $1,307 for parks, police, and roads, because currently we do not have fire. Also, if you'll notice for Smyrna, theirs is called public safety. They don't break it down by police and fire. And then if you go down a little bit more, you'll see another comparison chart which has our current as well as Smyrna's current, and then what the percentages would be. There again, like we had in the previous table, with fire and police at 100%, and then whatever percentage you want to do for Laverne, and what those numbers comparatively would be to Smyrna. Now, in the study that you were presented with a month and a half ago, whatever it was, there are other cities in there that you can compare to. If you need additional numbers for comparison with other cities around us, we can certainly pull that together. But basically, at this point, this is what we've gathered. So at this point, we need direction from you as far as where you want us to proceed from here.
And so with that, I'll go ahead and just open the floor up to the board. If y'all want to discuss this so that we might come up with a vision that we can even get onto the agenda for this month.
So next week, when we vote on this, or whenever it comes up for vote, are we voting on the whole thing as a whole, or do we have to pick out each individual thing and vote on it? Because that was going to take a lot of,
Well, that's one reason we're asking for input now, and between now and Tuesday, so we have an idea of what y'all would like to see for these rates, and we can kind of narrow it down, instead of having such a wide range from 20% to 90%. But I do want to add a little caveat. We're not sure if we can have the ordinance ready for Tuesday night. We are waiting on the draft from the consultant, and we may or may not be able to have it ready for Tuesday night.
so the numbers that you showed us up there for Smyrna, is that across the board as a whole, or is it broke down?
Well, on that bottom one, you can see it, if you go across, their roads
Broken down.
is 1567, their parks is 722, and then their police, is that? That's right.
419 for public safety.
That's right, 419 for public safety, so their total is 2708.
And that's on a single-family home, so you're not looking at the commercial or any of the other uses that's broke down, but if we did that for every use, you're gonna have a huge table and really not have a good comparison. Basically, what we're trying to do is just give you a comparison. If you was to buy, or, do a single-family home in Smyrna, your total of your impact fees is gonna be 2708. So if you was wanting to be somewhat in line with Smyrna, if you did 100% police and fire, and of course, y'all can change that if you want. We was just making the assumption that that's what y'all would want to stick with, is 100% on the police and fire. Then if you stuck with 30 or 40% of the proposed max for parks and roads, you would end up, $2,500 around $2,500 if you did 30%, and $3,100 if you did 50%. So you'd be right in the ballpark with what Smyrna would be. Now, I think Adam may have even mentioned it in at the last meeting, is just as soon as we adopt some fee, Smyrna's going to relook at their fee, because they're going to know that, okay, now we've adopted a higher fee, so now they can adopt a higher fee. So I would assume that just as soon as we adopt whatever we do adopt, especially if it's close to them or if it's above them, they're probably going to either match or exceed what we pass. So, but I would not recommend, going to the 80 and 90% and it being way out of line with Smyrna or anybody else in the region, because that's what Bruce was saying. And that's something we can do too. If you want us to compare more than just Smyrna, we can add that to a chart, get that back out to you. If you want to, like if you think we need to be in between the 30 and 50% range, we can break that down by even just 1%, or we can do it in, okay, if you was to do 32% or 34, we can break it down as much as we need to. I think at the last meeting, it was kind of asked, what is the range, what is the ballpark we're wanting to be in? So that's kind of what we're trying to do, is narrow it down, get feedback from y'all as to where do you think we kind of want to be? Are we wanting to be in the $3,000 range, or are we wanting to be in the $2,000, or we want to be in $4,000? And once we get that information, we can kind of break it down and give you some options to try to look at and approve.
It sounds like the first thing that maybe we could talk about is just separate out, just amongst ourselves, the police and fire, and see if we're all in agreement with 100% funding of the police and fire with the, I mean, that would be a starting conversation point, I think. Then,
And that's kind of what you, like right now, if you look, police, we currently get $112. I think in the study, it'll be 500 or somewhere around 500. Fire, of course, we get 0 right now. So that's kind of what you're gauging it on as far as how much of an increase is that going to be. But if you look, and it's kind of like what Bruce was saying a while ago, if you look at what that really does to the budget or anything, we're not talking a lot of money when you're talking about police and fire as far as what impact fee you're getting, and as much needs as we have in those areas. We just, like I said, made the assumption that 100% would be more than likely what this board would want, and then that way it'd give us a ballpark of where to go with the roads and the parks to try to keep it in line with other municipalities.
And speaking for myself, I agree with that. I do think fire and police should be funded at 100%. We're not talking huge numbers here, but that's our public safety.
I would agree with you on that. There's one caveat I would say, though, and that is if we're going to do police and fire at 100%, we need to consider the impact for the other ones and maybe not be as aggressive. I hate for us I hate for any board, especially us, to do something so aggressive that it puts people in a spot where they can't pay the fees. So I'm fine with the 100% for police and fire if we're a little more lenient on the other proposed rates.
So then I think it'd be better if we look at the dollar amount we're looking at for the impact fees, and then do the math backwards to put in the fire and police from there. My comment would be is we don't want to be too aggressive at the present time. Obviously, the amount of single-family homes coming out is very, very low compared to other years. But I think to meet and or exceed Smyrna would be the better number for me to work with.
I guess I'll be the bad guy here. Apparently Smyrna's been way ahead of us for many, many, many years with these impact fees. And I'm just gonna go back 20 years. The people that's lived here for at least 20 years, since the last impact fee study, they have not reaped any benefits from impact fees as far as being a steady incline. And I think that we need to raise them way up myself. Adam had talked about if you get them too high, people go to Nolensville and stuff. Smyrna's had these up this high for all these years. They get plenty of people. I think people that want to come to Laverne will pay the money. Plus, the people that live here are the ones that I'm thinking about. The people that's been here, the people that, you know, like our police department, and of course our fire has not gotten any benefits from it. But I think we need to be aggressive. I think that people will come to Laverne if they have to pay a little more, but I'm speaking for the people that's lived here for a long time, especially the last 20 years, including myself. And I feel like how much did we pay to get this impact fee? I mean, this impact study?
I don't remember
I
what
think
that
it was 50, wasn't it?
$50,000. So we paid $50,000 to get the impact study, so we have to believe that the company that gave that to us is, I mean, we talked to him on the phone and when we was doing the computer, and he told us, you know, that it was very, very uncommon for anybody to go that long without an impact fee. So now we've got it, and I feel like we need to be aggressive. Public safety, absolutely, but, you know, overall, I think, I mean, let's face it, we're running out of room to build. I don't think anybody can deny that, and everybody knows where the next building wants to be done on the other side of the interstate, and I want new people, don't get me wrong, but I also want, you know, quality homes on quality lots, and if the people want to come to Laverne bad enough, then, you know, they'll have to pay it. But I think the people that's lived in Laverne all these years need to start getting some of the benefits from it, especially with fire, police, parks, roads. I think they've earned it.
Alderman Jones?
I'm just trying to, I mean, I don't understand what you mean, get some of the benefits, but that's neither here nor there. With everything that's going on right now, you know, we're in the middle of a pandemic. People are losing their jobs, people's jobs is being cut back. I don't think we need to be that aggressive. If we've gone for a 20-year period without raising it, and you suddenly, you know, just drop this on someone, then they will have, that'll be I think the definition of the impact would be used the wrong way because it will impact the citizens. I don't think we need to be too aggressive about it. I don't think that it should have sat there that long and not have been addressed. One of the things that we did discuss during the workshop on this is I think definitely we must make sure that there's a clause placed in the ordinance that it does not get past at least 5 years, or I just don't think it should go past 5 years. I would even say 2 without being looked at, or if we could do an increments, break the increments down and just get rid of that 70, 80, and 90 and barely look at the 60. And I think we need to just start there and see what we can do to match it, because I just don't believe that if there's something that someone can get for a much lower price, as much as I do love Laverne, I just don't think anyone who has a choice before they move to Laverne is going to just automatically make that big of a jump trying to outdo Smyrna or any of these other county or cities around us. So I think we need to be less aggressive and a bit proactive in how we handle this from now on.
I agree. I think that we need to have a scheduled periodic review for incremental increases. I don't think that we necessarily need to do those increases right immediately. Like, I don't think that we need to be aggressive. I think that we need to be consistent, personally.
Well, the 5-year, putting that into ordinance, it wouldn't be something that is automatically forced, but that is something that we discussed with the presentation, and I agree absolutely. I think that gives us plenty of time to make sure we don't get into a 10-year stint, because if every 5 years that board, whatever that board looks like then, decides to do it, that gives them another year or so to do that study, get it to the board, and make it back so that we can keep those going. I think one thing that Mr. Leach hit on is, if I'm remembering right, indexing for the construction pricing board. And that way, those rates, as that pricing changes, will adjust with it. I think that's one thing to include in this. For me personally, when I was looking at the rates, knowing that most likely Smyrna is going to come back and look at theirs, do a study if they haven't already authorized it, I was looking anywhere from 50 to 70% of the proposed single-family impact fees comparison.
I can live with I mean, you know, I agree with Alderman Jones. Yes, there is a pandemic, and I understand that, but when you start talking about people that's coming in and buying property and building a new home, that means that they have not been suffering like other people. But if we could do 70% and set it up on a 3 years, you know, jump in the middle between 2 and 5 and do a 3-year, I think that would be, and like you said, we're gonna sit here and compare Smyrna's. I bet once we do our thing, Smyrna's gonna do their thing if we wanna use Smyrna in a conversation.
Even with looking at it today, and if we do go on the lower end, we still have an option to look at it again in another year or 2 years and increase it again. So for me, it's easier to go small steps and then move up if things are growing, rather than be too high and then try and bring it back down again.
What I'm afraid of, and I had I had a long talk with Randolph about this, teaching me, if we do a low rate with the expectations, excuse me, that we're coming back, a lot of your builders are gonna run in and buy up all the permits. Is that a fair statement, Randolph?
Yes.
I hate to throw you in the mix, but
No. Anytime that they see that there's gonna be some added fees and taxes applied to them, they're gonna bum rush us with applications before those rates hit. So yeah, that most likely would happen, but I mean, it's like we discussed the other day, there's very few lots left to build on right now anyway.
exactly.
But I'd say this, that if you're gonna swing for the fences and you know, the folks that have been here 20 and 20 plus years, obviously they've been reaping some benefit of our impact fees. If you raise them too high and cut it off, then the burden's gonna be on the tax base to find ways to make up the money that's being lost because of the high impact fees. If the builders and developers choose not to develop in the city of Laverne because of the impact fees, then by swinging for the fences and basically then you've turned it off. So you gotta find that sweet spot. You know, it's like when you swing for the fences, you gotta find that sweet spot.
Oh, you talking baseball, I understand.
Well, so then you know what I
It's
mean.
in my wheelhouse.
So you know what I mean, then you can't be, you know, you've just gotta take a level-headed approach to it and remember that, and my feeling is this, I hear it a lot, that, you know, not to say that they'll turn off on you, builders and developers, but if they should, then you have nothing. You know, you're pricing yourself plumb out of business, so to speak. So I just say keep that in mind when you try to come up with that number, that it's that sweet spot you're looking for, that keeps the developers, keeps the builders here, keeps them occupied in this city, and won't shut it off. But yeah, they will hit us, and I mean they'll, you know, with whatever lots they've got, they don't have that many lots to come to us with. There's plenty left to do, but not a whole lot.
But as you so eloquently call it, a bum rush, I like that.
What it is.
Right, and builders come in and buy up a bunch of permits in 6 months. If they've not made any kind of motion towards building, they've got to give you personally, is that my understanding, you personally, an understanding of why they've not
They have to come, if their permit expires, they have to come to me to renew it. And, you know, if just because, well, we bought those permits in order to avoid paying extra fees and extra impact fees, I wouldn't be so apt to renew a permit.
Okay.
For that reason alone, because, I mean, the idea is you're gonna pull that permit, and so we're expecting then that we're gonna do those inspections, we're gonna actually get out there in the field and do that work. So I would caution them to getting too aggressive in, if they can't get her started, at least get it started within the 6 months. I mean, if after you've been given the permit, 6 months later, you have even failed to start it, you know, as long as you start it, then your inspections continue for the next 180 days, then you got another 180 days of extending the permit. So it's not just based on when it's issued, so keep that in mind too, that as long as they start something, and, you know, even if it's a initial erosion control, that's an inspection, that's another 180 days. So they can manipulate it best way they know how to keep the permit alive and well.
Now, Randolph, it's been a while since I was in planning, so some of that stuff is sort of fading out on me, but can you explain to me the actual process on that? Once that permit expires, is there a state rule, or is there not an ordinance to where
No,
it's
sir.
voided?
No, as it's stated in the building code, that the permit's good for 180 days from the
Okay.
date it's issued. Now, if they start, say, 140 days into the project and, you know, they've got still another 3 months to build, or they started at the 170th day, you know, they call in for that initial erosion control on the 170th day of that permit, then that permit is good for another 180 days from that day.
Okay,
It's from the date of the inspection. Now, the clock starts ticking obviously when the permit is issued. But if, again, on the 178th day, they call us for an initial erosion control, then they've got another 180 days that permit is good then for another 180 days.
okay, well, what the question that I'm asking is, what if they don't make that 180 days? Will it void the permit?
Well, it doesn't void it. They come back to me wanting, will typically come back to me wanting to extend the permit, and I have to review that on a case-by-case basis. And if they state that the reason is because of a pandemic or because of, you know, a health
I know one year we had
related
a-
issue or
we had weather.
something other than, well, we just were trying to beat that impact fee, then I would probably not be willing to extend that permit at that
And then,
point.
in that case, what do? They have to submit for a new?
Reapply.
Okay, that's, okay.
So,
But I say this, once the impact fees are paid, the fees are paid. I mean, when they come back to me, then basically they're coming back just to get the building aspect, the building permit, not all the impact fees, because once the impact fees are paid, they're paid.
Yeah.
And I mean, it could be 5 years before they actually start it, you know, the impact fees, like tap fees. Once all the tap fees are paid, they're paid, you know, and they're paid for the life of that lot.
so if we were to pass this and say, okay, we're gonna start out at 25%, and then we're gonna, amend it every year and, you know, look at it, the builders, from what you say, are gonna pretty much say, well, hey, we need to get this stuff now and get bum rushed, and, cause they're gonna raise them, so let's do it. To whereas if we get aggressive and raise them, they're gonna bum rush us anyway.
They may or they may not.
They may or they may not. It's
those-
definitely a,
Those waters are untested, because if you you know, go for that 100% or 90% or even 80%, you know,
right.
we had never confronted a builder or contractor with those kinds of numbers. So, you know, if again, like I say, if you know, you have to find that sweet spot in order to get her over the fence.
I'm just looking at it like if we were to go small and they come in and get all those, pay all those impact fees and permits, knowing that we're going to increase it slowly. And then if we go ahead and do it aggressively, we're gonna get that money, the city is, up front. To whereas we may lose it in a couple of years if they go ahead and get all them small impact fees.
If they choose to apply.
If they choose to apply, which you know, if you told me, Steve, I'm gonna raise your car insurance 12 months from now, but if you'll go ahead and pay it for 2 or 3 years, we'll keep it the same. You know, if I had the money, I'd say, well, sure, let's, you know, pay 2 or 3 years, but I think 20 years has been ample enough. I just feel like I think that spot out there on the other side of the interstate's gonna be very, very, very nice at some point.
That's one thing too to keep in mind, is that when you raise the fees on those impact fees, the ultimate whom it affects most is whoever's gonna buy that house, because those fees are gonna be rolled into the price of that home to the buyer.
Absolutely.
So the builder's not gonna be out a dime, really, honestly, they're not gonna be out. It's the person that they're pricing that home to that buyer. They're gonna be the ones that really, you know, lays it out at the end of the line.
Over the term of a 20 or 30-year mortgage, or even a 15-year mortgage, you may not notice if it's at 20% and your impact fees go up $600 compared to what they previously were. It's going to be a very small amount each month. But the bigger you get, I mean, if you look at this, the current $1,307, even if we go to 20%, that's nearly doubling the impact fees. And then after a certain point, I mean, you notice $5,000 or $6,000, or this, 90% is almost 7,000, so 100% would be well over $7,000. That's a big investment for something that you get a return on that you can't really see. You can't quantify the return you're getting on more police and fire at a certain point that you're paying every month for. I mean, some people buy cars that are less than $7,000. I'm one of them. So I don't know that I would want to go to that high of an amount. I don't think that would be prudent for anybody.
Well, speaking for me personally, hearing both sides of the argument, both that, yes, we have, as a city, foregone this for 20 years. At the same time, we are in a pandemic. Personally, I can see us starting off at the 50%, which is, the total is 3718. That increases our roads, police, fire significantly. I believe it almost doubles all of those, and then adds in fire where they weren't here before. But I think that's a good step. It's something that's not necessarily, it's not $5,000 and $6,000, but at the same time, it's starting to get us to the point where we can start addressing all these needs, whether it's, Garland's tractors or the roads that need to be taken care of, whether we need new parks, as we've seen with the master plan, and then equipment for police and fire, which we see every budget year, and we always, swallow our pride and try to figure out how to make it work. So that's my thoughts on this. I know I haven't chimed in a ton, but I think that's, at least for me, I see that as possibly some middle ground, but.
So that would be 2.5 times more than the current rate. So that seems like a pretty significant increase to me personally.
So it sounds like we all agree on definitely an increase. We just got to figure out who makes the motion, I guess, and then we go from there.
Well, we need to get some direction for Bruce and Kyle, and if we're able to get the actual wording in before Tuesday, we can put this into an ordinance, and then the board can vote on it. Otherwise, it'll be, if we can't get that verbiage, it will be shifted over to next month, just because we don't have the proper wording.
So we need to get you all to pull out the single dwellings and fire and police, and
That's what this does.
just pull it all out.
Well, I think we're looking right now, sounds like probably 30 at the lowest and then maybe 55 at the highest. It seems to be somewhat of a consensus, and try to get, revise this that breaks it down a little bit, and maybe either 5% or 4% increments to let y'all look at those numbers, and that'll get you, more information to look at, and definitely keep, I guess, police and fire at 100%.
I think it'd be good to break this down for 5%. I mean, it's a good spreadsheet, just add in there, just break the lines up, go to, 30, 35, 40, 45, go up in there. So I would just put that in there because it gives us a bit of breakdown of where we need to be. And then obviously I think we all concur that the fire police need to be 100%, and then we do the math backwards for the other items that need to be addressed. And let me just input, as far as from the planning commission side, we've had very, very few single-family homes come in this year, so the timing is good. Timing is bad because of COVID, but is there a good time? Probably not. As I say, if we get to a point that we all agree on to put an ordinance for today, we can always look at it again next year or the year after.
How long is the study good for? In other words, how often would we have to do another study at 50,000 if we, wanted to review it more frequently?
I don't know that there is a specific time frame of when it expires. Obviously, impact fee studies are based on the projects and things that you're wanting to do. When those projects are completed, you don't really have the basis there for those fees. So, if we were to renew it every 5 to 7 years and make sure we're where we need to be, I think that's reasonable. If you're doing it every 2 years, well, you're spending $50,000 every 2 years just to do a study. I think that's a little too often. But I can see maybe 5 to 7 years. And I don't know exactly how we can put that in the ordinance, but we can work on that. One idea that I've thought of is maybe having the current fees expire after a certain amount of time. That way you're kind of forced to look at it again and repass, reevaluate and reassess what those fees need to be for the next 5 years or whatever the case may be.
No.
And I think on the study, going back to it, it's kind of like what Bruce was saying, is, it's based on the projects and stuff. So if it's still reasonable to make the assumption that that study is still valid because of the projects you have left or the new projects that would kind of take its place, this last study we was using for 20 years. So there's no reason that you couldn't use this study for probably a 10-year, 15-year period. And like I think many on this board has already mentioned, if you wanted to start off at 30%, there's no reason that you can't say, okay, we're trying to ease this in, so we're going to start off at 30%, and then in 2 years, it'd be just up to the board to bring it back up and say, instead of 30%, let's go ahead and go to 35% now. And then in 2 years, let's go to 40%. You're using the same study, so it's not like you're not basing it off anything. You're just trying to ease it in because, again, I think if you go way too high, like what Randolph said, everybody's going to come in at that point, because if you go from, okay, my impact fees are $2,000, but now you're going to have to pay $12,000, I'm coming in and getting my permit. Now, if it's impact fees now are $2,000 and it's going to be $3,500, I probably ain't going to come in and get my permit because I'm just going to pass that $1,500 on. So you're not going to really affect a bunch of people coming in and get permits. So that's one of the things I would caution is if you go high, yes, you're fixing to have a whole bunch of permits that go out the door because they're going to want to pay the smaller fee and they're going to beat that time frame. So what you're going to look at is you're going to lose all the money on maybe 100 houses or 50 houses because they're going to pay that lower fee. And like what Randolph said a while ago, once the impact fees are paid, they're paid. So if I pay a $1,000 impact fee on a lot, because that's what it is today, if you raised it up to $10,000 in a month, and I go ahead and pay my $1,000 and it don't expire, I don't ever have to pay that $9,000. So if you go up high, everybody's going to come in and pay it, and then you're just going to lose out on that money too. So I think it's better to try to meet somewhere in the middle.
But if you've got land that's for sale and it hasn't been sold, there's no developing on it, there's nothing, it's just land, and we raise those impact fees, people can't come in and buy anything.
No, they're not going to. It's just the current lots.
Right, and I keep mentioning this because I feel like that's gonna be the next big thing is over across the interstate, and on this side of the interstate, I mean, we're about full up, so I don't know how many homes you would lose over here, but I feel like that development over there is gonna happen sooner or later. And if it's not been sold and split up, they can't buy anything, right?
Just remember, though, that if the cost of development goes up, and it gets to the price range that they can't develop, then they won't develop, then you don't have it.
I think, I have to believe in my heart that it's gonna happen, Randolph. That's all I can say. I got no proof, I got no.
Well, I agree with you, but I'm just,
Yeah.
I want us to be cautious about it.
I have a couple more questions, and this one is probably basic, and I probably shouldn't even ask it out loud, but does this go to the operation budget or the capital budget?
And this is more for capital, this is for road projects, this is for park projects, this is for new stuff. This is not, it's not used for existing, like personnel or anything like that. This is for new personnel, new equipment, new facilities, new roads, projects, things like that.
And that's kind of sad to me because the biggest need that I think that we have in police and fire both is staff. I think that, we've been able to give them a lot of the equipment and capital requests that they request, maybe not everything, but a significant portion of it, so.
Right, but if you hire new firefighters, you could possibly use this impact fee money for equipment or things that the new firefighters need. But it can't be used to replace existing equipment, for existing firefighters.
Can you use some new equipment, Garland? New equipment. So can't,
Aging.
He's got a lot of aging equipment, he said.
I know, but Bruce said we could get you a lot of new equipment. Wow, I don't know. I guess we'll have to.
The other thing is, when you write the ordinance for us to approve, is there any way to do it line by line as far as breaking out police, fire? That way we can establish a percentage based on the category?
Yeah, that's what I was asking earlier. Just seemed like a long process, or I guess pick out 7 or 8 that's the most important. I don't know how you would decide.
I haven't seen the draft ordinance yet, so I'm not sure exactly how it's going to be listed out there.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that it's going to have, each different line item for each different use and what that amount's going to be for that specific use.
Okay, because the reason I'm asking is because we kind of get an opportunity to say yes or no, and I hate to throw the baby out with the bathwater if there's just a portion of it that I can't say yes to, but the rest of it I'm fine with. It's better, I think, for the board to be able to come to a consensus if we can break it down a little bit when we vote on it.
Yeah, and if you go back to page 281, Glenn, that's basically what you're going to end up with, is kind of what we have now, is you're going to end up with a chart that has all the uses, and that helps Randolph and his folks in the permitting process that, if you fall under one of these areas, this is what the fee is. So like I say, whenever you get down to the bottom that's doing the comparison, the only thing I'm comparing, or the only thing that this chart compares, was a single-family detached. So we may be looking at completely different numbers when you look at all the other stuff. And that's one thing to keep in mind too, is you look at some of these industrial buildings that are 1 million square feet, look at the cost there. We didn't even figure that up. So that's another thing to keep in mind, is whenever you look at road, like Bruce said earlier, like park impact fee, it doesn't even matter. That's only for, the residential. But on police, as you can see, it's different values for those different uses. So always keep that in mind, is the only thing that we broke down as far as numbers in the bottom is single-family detached homes. So, that's just to give you a comparison with, like say, Smyrna.
Could I get you to email this worksheet to me?
Yes.
Any other questions on impact fees?
An email for the same thing that we had on the packet, but just by itself?
Yes, just in an Excel format so I can put a power pivot on it and
Yeah.
play with some numbers.
I'd love to have one too, as a matter of fact, because my computer wouldn't load all that stuff hardly.
We can send it out to all of you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Because what we have is PDF format, and I can't manipulate the numbers the way I want to, that's why.
Right.
Could you mind putting the 5% in first and then send it out? That way we can take a look at it.
Yeah, I'll either send out the one I've currently got in the morning, or I'll wait till tomorrow evening and send out both of them, or I'll send it out and.
So it sounds like you and Bruce got your work cut out for you the next 4 days. Oh, Kyle, okay. Yeah, I think that would be a big help. I know it would be for me, to see it broke down.
Well, once I send it out, just if you see anything that you need or you want to see differently, let me know, and I'll try to make those corrections. And if it's something that's probably useful for everybody else to see, then we can send that back out also.
All right.
Any other discussion on impact fees? Okay, moving on to number 13, discussion ordinance to amend Title 9 of the Laverne Municipal Code regarding transient vendors and door-to-door solicitation. This has been a long time kind of pain point, but this is just updating the municipal code when it comes to transient vendors and door-to-door solicitation. It breaks it apart, so this is now going to be 2 separate chapters. And we're adding in some different languages and adjusting a little bit of the permitting fees. The fee is being increased from $50 per permit to $250 for a company permit. And then $75 for each individual person going door to door for the door-to-door portion. Because of course, both those people are having background checks done, so you've got both the cost of the background check and then whoever's doing it at their time. This also removes the surety bond. There is a $1,000 surety bond on these permits, and we've not had a surety bond called in. And this is just basically more work for that business to do, to go get and provide, and then we have to validate it. So the thought is to remove that from this. This also this allows this board to set up something called a no-knock list. And for door-to-door sales, if you don't want those at your house, you would be able to sign up for a list. We've talked about even providing stickers people could put on their doors. Essentially, anybody who's doing door-to-doors, that company would have to pull that list and make sure that they do not door knock those homes. If we get complaints on that, then at that point, part of the new wording in here allows for the city administrator to revoke that permit if he feels appropriate. Bruce, am I missing anything with that, or did I get most of it?
Basically, all I would be able to do would be suspend the permit.
Suspend it.
The board would actually have to revoke it if it's a serious enough offense. The only thing I want to mention is Kyle and I, after discussing the draft version, we thought about the census workers and if there was an exception in here for them. So on page 291 of the packet, we've added another exemption for federal or city census takers, and you can read the language there. This obviously would not apply to them, but obviously we do want them to make sure they have proper identification and also to notify the police department before they actually start in the area. That way the police department's already aware. So we did add that exemption since what I had sent to you the other night.
It's a good catch. I know we've gotten some phone calls on some of our local ones, so, and a lot of questions when we did the special census a couple of years ago.
Right.
On page 3 of this ordinance, paragraph 9106, and this, I believe, is an existing policy that's been in place, but it seems to me like that would prohibit ice cream trucks from coming.
Well, 9106 is in regards to transient merchants,
Okay,
which are basically on the side of the road selling goods to whoever stops by. This isn't regarding ice cream trucks. Ice cream trucks are now in that mobile food vendor permit, which is Chapter 9 of this title. So this does not apply to ice cream trucks.
okay, thank you for the clarification.
So each person going door to door, each individual person has to pay $75.
That's if this is adopted, yes. Currently, they pay how much, Bruce?
Currently, everybody going door to door pays $50. And of course, $29 of that goes to TBI for the background check. So that only leaves, $21 for the city. And by the time Sergeant Stalinsky does the background check and I work on, getting the permits issued, we're losing money. And then, of course, this also adds in a company permit.
Right, that's what I was gonna say, the
Which-
company and then the individual.
Right, each company would have to have a permit, which also identifies who the manager or supervisor is that has control over those that are going door to door. So that gives us a contact person for those people going door to door. That one is $250, and they have to submit a list of who all is going to be applying for the individual permits, the badges. And we're going to be issuing badges instead
And then
of,
they pay $75 each.
and each person has to pay the $75.
And how long is that good for?
It is good for up to 6 months, but it depends on the business license situation.
That ought to cut down on door knocking.
Well, this gives us a little bit of oversight as well, because you remember just this past summer, I don't know if y'all seen many calls or seen messages on social media where, rude, aggressive, people wouldn't leave, they would, trample through their garden, whatever. This would give us a contact point to say, hey, if that's being brought to us, hey, Bruce, can you reach out to this company's person? We're receiving, some complaints, and they can get that addressed versus us just trying to look to see who might be in charge. Sometimes we don't even know. We just have to start calling the company and find out who's the regional rep.
Does this prohibit political purposes going door to door, just for solicitation? Solicitation is defined as sales.
There is a commercial permit and a non-commercial permit. Well, non-commercial may not even have to have a permit, but if you have the sticker on your door, that applies to everybody. If you're on the no-knock list, that only applies to the commercial solicitors, not the non-commercial solicitors. But if you put the sticker on your door, that's supposed to apply to everybody according to the way this is currently written.
Can we double check that with Evan just to make sure? Because I know political speech is highly protected under the First Amendment, and let's just run that part through him.
Yes, we can double check on that.
Any other questions? Okay. Moving to mayor and alderman comments. Alderman Jones.
Weather's changing, just make sure that you, get your chimney and all your fire lines in your home, or heat lines in your home. Make sure everything gets checked out to, so we won't have any big problems with fires or anyone getting hurt. And I beat you to the punch, chief. Other than that, everybody be careful.
Thank you, sir. Alderman Coates.
No comment this evening, no.
Alderman No.
I'm just excited about the month of October. We got a lot of good stuff. David and Kathy has worked relentlessly. We approved this thing tonight with that band. I'm really looking forward to that. But the biggest news, Wednesday, Senior Citizen Center. Very excited about seeing our seniors. So, very excited.
Vice Mayor.
There's a lot of stuff to look forward to in this month. We have Old Timers Day coming up. So if you plan to go anywhere on Saturday the 17th, plan around a parade that starts at 10. Make sure that you attend that. It's always a lot of fun for everyone. Also, Bruce, I want to thank you for the agenda item summary sheets. Those are very helpful. I really appreciate that. That's great work. Also, October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and as the only woman on the board, I will just say, every woman, please go get your mammograms. They're very important, and I encourage you to do that. It should save a lot of lives, especially your own. And finally, just as a fun fact, Amazon Prime Day is the 13th and 14th of October, which is a really good time to get started on your holiday shopping if you are so inclined. So, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Just as everyone said, October is packed. We have Old Timers Festival. We have the Goblins and Goodies. We have, of course, the Senior Center, which everyone was excited to hear is reopening. We have the Zombie Walk, which is new. We have lots of different events, lots of activities. So, Laverne, we want you to stay safe, but also come out and have a good time. With that, call the meeting adjourned.